All right, welcome to Master the Game with Juice. Today we're talking about attributes and races. So Sly Flourish had posted on Twitter, I think yesterday sometime, maybe last night. I saw it last night, that he felt races should not be tied to set attributes, or something like that. I don't remember the exact phrase he had, but basically he didn't like that attribute bonuses were tied to races. And I was reading through the thread of responses to him, and people made a lot of interesting points, or at least that I thought were interesting. People were talking about different systems like 13th Age and things like that. The new Pathfinder 2nd edition that's going to it sounds like have a racial bonus, but also have a class bonus to an attribute. And a lot of people, though, were saying they wish that the attribute bonus just came from the class. Others said they thought it would be kind of nice to have it tied to backgrounds, to make backgrounds matter more. And in fact, I don't think anybody on Twitter I saw disagreed with changing it up. There was a post from Dungeon Solver's blog post that I thought was really well done for the most part. I didn't like how they phrased their argument, but I understood their argument and I liked a lot of their points. I think they missed on some key factors that they could have thrown in there. And I'll probably write a blog post. This last week I've been really inspired to write some blog posts. So I'll probably put some blog posts up in the next few weeks over on rpgjuice.com. And one of them probably about this, because I like this whole debate, this discussion. But anyways, so Antoine saw that I shared the blog post over on, I think, one of my pages or my group, Master the Game on Facebook. I think that's where he saw it. And he just disagrees that it sounds like that you should remove racial modifiers altogether. He thinks it should stay that way, and I haven't heard a true compelling argument of why it should stay that way. It sounds like his argument is because that's why you play D&D, to play the tropes, which is fine. Again, I think playing the trope is completely fine. Or, in other words, playing the stereotype is completely fine. Most people do that. But every now and then you want to mix it up and go against the trope or go against the stereotype. And my counter argument to playing the stereotype is, could you imagine if, like, 5th edition had gender bonuses? You know, because his argument was, well, it's species, it's not actually races. And it's like, okay, well, say it was races. You could do the stereotype. Think about it. Who are the greatest athletes in the world right now? Most of them, I believe, depending on the sports, are African Americans. So maybe African Americans get bonuses to their strength, dex, and con. You know, I don't know. +1 through all those. I don't know. You know, but then think about it. Like, do you really want a game that emulates the stereotypes? I think in some regards, sure. I like how Fantasy Age has it. So in Fantasy Age, you pick your race, but then, what's it called? It's called something else, I think, on there. Because you're not just picking a race. Like, you're picking, like, Orzammar Dwarf, for example. Well, that's Dragon Age. But same system, basically. Ooh. Sorry, I almost ran over a snapper turtle. Huge one, too. Anyways, so you've got the different, races. I'll just refer to them as races in Fantasy Age. And they are, the way it works is you roll on a table for the feature you get from it. And I kind of like that more. In fact, when I first saw Fantasy Age or Dragon Age, can't remember which one I saw first, I actually preferred that, and I kind of wish they did that in Dungeons and Dragons. I love Dungeons and Dragons. I like the system, and I'm probably saying his name wrong. Arl. He commented on Antoine's thing and completely agreed with him. But some of his arguments were that if you remove the attribute bonus, you're making it so races don't matter. And that's not true, because you still have all the abilities that come with a race. You still have the language. You still have, for example, let's use dwarf, because that's a common one that has come up a lot in these discussions. You have stone cunning. If you're a mountain dwarf, you have, I believe, heavy armor proficiency. If you're a hill dwarf, I don't remember what you get from that. But you get these these special abilities. So you still are unique. The race still matters. The part that... So Antoine also said that... I'm sorry, my thoughts are a little all over the place right now with this discussion, because I've been reading so much on it in the last 24 hours. Antoine had said that you say you're a fighter, we'll use the example, and you're a mountain dwarf. So you get the +2 to strength, right? And that is awesome because, yeah, great. But just because you're a mountain dwarf does not make you any better than a elf fighter. And I completely disagree with that, because that's not true. A mountain dwarf is a better fighter than a elf in almost every way, shape, and form. You get the bump to con. You also get the bump to strength. If you want to be an elf, we'll say, you're not going to have that bump to strength. You get the bump to dex, but now you have to choose a weapon where that dex modifier is going to help you more. Because that doesn't apply to every weapon, the modifier you choose. So there's only select weapons that use your dex modifier for hand-to-hand combat, for your bonus to damage. So again, that's not true. And even if it was, let's just say it is. Let's just pretend that, you can apply your dex modifier to every single weapon rather than strength. Because it goes the other way too. Like a mountain dwarf is less efficient. They're not as good as an elf with a bow. They won't be. It's impossible at level 1. You will be better as an elf than a dwarf at level 1 with a bow. It's true. Unless you're talking about an elf who purposely didn't put 18 or 16, if you're doing point buy, into dex. That's the only way that you will be equal to a dwarf. But otherwise, you're superior. You just are. Now, I don't have a problem playing an inferior character. That's not my issue. I love going against the tropes, not only the races, but sometimes the classes. A character I really was looking forward to playing in Tomb of Annihilation was a dwarf warlock, and I think I had a 16 for my spellcasting attribute, which I believe is charisma. And I ended up dying, and fairly soon into that campaign. But again, I guess my whole point is that I think, there are groups I've played with. I have a group I play with at home that wants you to optimize, or at least make somewhat optimal choices. And I have been heckled in that for not making optimal choices. This would go to, if I went against if I chose half orc to be a wizard, I would get the same response from them, where they would not want that. Now again, I don't care, I play what I want, but there are other people who will conform. So then they're not playing what they want. And it got me thinking, just thinking of that scenario. And last night when I saw this, I love the idea of removing attribute bonuses from races altogether. Why can't a dwarf be an awesome wizard at level 1? Why do they have to be a lesser wizard? Why? Because of the stereotype? Like, that's crap. If we were in like the 1960s, 1950s, and we're talking about athletes, most of your pro athletes were white. Now, yeah, it's because, of racism and segregation and all of that. But your top athletes were considered white. Your record holders were white in most sports. At least in America. And probably some other places too. I'm not trying to get all technical and stuff like that. But the idea is that if that thought of, well, that's just how it always is, and these other races can't play these sports, if that was the train of thought, then you never would have had your Michael Jordans in the NBA, or Hank Aaron, or, any of those people. Your Walter Payton, your Barry Sanders, your Jerome Bettis. Think of like any athletes, You wouldn't have had these people because they would have been like, well, no, I'm not able to be the best at that. It just wouldn't have happened. So I'm glad things don't stay the same. I'm glad things evolve. I'm glad 5th edition has evolved and elf is no longer a class, I think these things are important, and I look forward to seeing them evolve some more. And eventually, and I think Pathfinder's going in a good direction with changing races to species. I hope that we get more things like this. I hope the mechanics of systems continue to evolve. I hope we continue to think, why do we do this? Is it just because it's how things have always been done? Because that's what I feel like racial modifiers really are. It's just how it's always been done. And 5th edition, I think, did a great job of not doing negatives and just doing positives just because it was easier. It didn't change the game. It didn't make it it didn't give it more power creep like I saw being discussed. All it did is change how the math works, and that's it. That's all it did. It didn't make anything like the actual tactics of the game easier. It just changed. It just made it simpler to play for people. Because why even have negative numbers? So the next step, in my opinion, is why even have modifiers at all for races? What's the point? You can find other ways to create variances from race to race, and I think the way to do it is with abilities. Make them truly unique. Because I'm sorry, a +1 to your strength, or +2 for the +1 modifier to your strength, doesn't make you unique. That is exactly what a power gamer is looking for, is those +1s. But saying a mountain dwarf gets a ability that makes them that allows them to brew, let's say brew potions, brew beer and things like that, that might be more beneficial anyway in some instances. Other instances it might serve as flavor, but I think that's far more interesting than a +1 in your strength. Giving them resistances to things like poison or maybe magic. Maybe you add an ability to the game altogether of resistance against magic, or resistance against one type of elemental magic. Something like that to replace the Constitution bump. That's where I would like to see the systems in general go in the future. Again, make the races more unique. But I'd also like classes to be made more unique, so that every fighter doesn't feel like another fighter. But that's a video for another day. So anyways, that's my take on your races and attribute modifiers. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. I think, 5th edition is obviously what we're talking about. Pathfinder 2 is what we're talking about. So, it is what it is in the game. You're not going to change the masses who play that. But maybe some groups will discuss it, and maybe they will try these things. I know it's something I am tempted to try out and see how it works. So, yeah. Anyways, with that, this is Master of the Game. I am Juice. Be sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Game on.